Hello everybody and welcome to another 31 Days of Horror 2014 update. It's a triple bill this time with some revenge monster mayhem going down. Yes, this is a slew of sequels and they're all revenge related. Not quite like Bedeviled, which was realistic. This is more, the kind of slashery, like Friday the 13th Jason or Nightmare on Elm Street's Freddy. We are talking about Scarecrow 1, 2, and 3. That's right. First, let's get on to the first one, Scarecrow, released in 2002. Directed by Emmanuel Itier. If you know who that is, you're better off than I am. Don't really know the guy. I think he's done a bunch of nothing really. I think he's got producer credits on a few decent movies and stuff, but that's about it. Also in the film is essentially nobodies. Tim Young, Todd Rex, Tiffany Shepis, Jen Ritchie, Roxana Bina, John Moore, Richard Elfman, Jason Simon, Mark. There's a whole slew of them because, they're teenagers. Well, they're like 30-somethings playing teenagers. And the story here is essentially there's this, geeky kid. The outcast gets picked on. There's only, I'm trying to think, there was one girl who was sort of sympathetic to him. And of course he took a liking to her because of that. Because all the other girls, made fun of him. The guys all picked on him. And eventually, what ends up happening is the main person who picks on him gets the girl who's sympathetic to him drunk, essentially, and puts the moves on her, and they get to kissing, and of course this outcast geeky young teenager sees this and he's like, oh my god. So he runs home, where he finds, he lives in a trailer park. He busts in, and he already knew this was going to be taking place, but he busts in on his mom getting doggied and by this really, really mean, disgusting dude who, that dude, I think it took a whole bottle of whiskey before anybody would go home with this guy. But essentially the young kid is really, at this point he's a little mad, and he tries to stand up to this guy who's banging his mom, who she just met that day, by the way. And he decides, no, ain't gonna have it, not gonna happen. And eventually he goes running out into the cornfield and gets killed by the Scarecrow. And his soul goes into the Scarecrow, and then the revenge starts happening. So it's kind of like these films are a mix of, say, Child's Play meets The Crow meets like Children of the Corn. You mix all those together, you might end up with the Scarecrow movies. The first film is interesting. I mean, it's low budget. Acting ranges from not good to acceptable. There are a few decent portrayals of characters in here, but most of the people are way over the top. It's weird because it like I said, I always have a hard time watching these low budget films when they cast like 30 somethings as like 18-year-olds, because they're clearly not. There's a huge gap in terms of physicality and sexuality and all that kind of stuff between those age groups. So I always have a hard time believing that. So I always, I'm taken back. But once you get past that and you get to it, it's like, it's very stereotypical. It's very paint by the numbers. You know what's going to happen. It's, boy bullied, standard bully story. Now it turns into a revenge story, and that's where the film actually becomes fun. The kills are kind of decent. The Scarecrow apparently is a ninja. He's doing flips and all sorts of crazy stuff. I don't know where, but he's also, and this is the one thing, again, you either like it or you don't, because the Scarecrow is possessed or by this geeky kid. But as soon as he turns into the Scarecrow, the Scarecrow takes over, or whatever. You have the transcendence. Scarecrow takes over, and the Scarecrow has a lot of one-liners, like he's Freddy Krueger. So he's completely different personality compared to the person who he's avenging, I guess. But yeah, it's fun. It's not a very long movie at all. I don't even know what the length of it is. It's like maybe an hour and a half. So, yeah, it was good enough that it spawned at least 2 sequels. And the second one is actually called Scarecrow Slayer. That was released 2 years later, 2004, directed by David Michael Latt, who, well, again, it's a name I don't know. Do you know him? Because, yeah, he's produced a lot of things. I mean, he produced Sharknado. Does that help? Well, he's got a production credit on it. He's actually got over 150 production credits, but he's directed less than 10 movies. One of them being the Scarecrow Slayer movie. But that's it. That's essentially the only movie I've ever heard of. The cast, however, is a little bit better. Again, there's the whole no-name people: Scott Carson, Kim Little, Stephen Schultz, Jessica Matson, Nicole Kingston, bunch of people we've never heard of, but it does have a name attached to it. Tony Todd, the Candyman himself, is in the film. That's right, he's right at the beginning. And essentially he plays a character who's been following the Scarecrow mythos. He apparently had a run-in, or at least he thinks he has a run-in, you don't really know, when he was little, and he thinks the Scarecrow killed his papa. So he's been trying to, track down all the information about the Scarecrow and the different, sightings and happenstance. And he wrote a book, and it actually starts off with somebody doing an interview with him at his home about, the Scarecrow and the mythology and all that kind of stuff. Shoot over to, I guess the people, again, they're not, they're supposed to be college freshmen in this one. Again, they look a little bit older than they really should, but at least they're not in high school. I mean, there's only going to be a year difference, I think, between the people who were in the first movie and the characters who were in the first movie and the characters who were in the second one. But essentially, it's a fraternity prank that I don't know. They've hooked them up with cameras and all this kind of stuff, and they're going to go to this. They have to steal the Scarecrow. Now they know that the Scarecrow is on the property of the guy who wrote the books about the Scarecrows, but that's the standard. Hazing initiation to a fraternity type thing. You got to do something crazy and big to get in there type thing, I guess. And so these kids, I call them kids because they're supposed to be playing these young people, but of course, like I said, they're almost my age. They go off and they go to get this Scarecrow, and because they're out there and they're trying to cut him down, they're making all this noise. Tony Todd's character's in his house, and he's like, "Oh my God, I knew it!" And then he starts, spewing off all this weird nonsense. And the person who's doing the interview seems clearly lost into what he's going on about, but he keeps going on about how he captured the Scarecrow. He captured the Scarecrow, and of course, as the viewer, you're thinking, "Holy crap, the Scarecrow is outside." Now, here's the weird thing: when I'm watching this, I'm thinking, well, the Scarecrow's already possessed by somebody, and as soon as they cut him down, he's going to come to life and start killing people, right? No, that's not it. It takes a little bit of a turn, and I don't want to get into it too much, but essentially, Tony Todd's character is the one who ends up killing somebody, and that possessed person goes into the body of the Scarecrow, and thus the Scarecrow is unleashed again. This one, it took some really weird twists and turns. I didn't like the end. The end was essentially one of the fraternity brothers is apparently trying to be a Marine, and so he's got this arsenal in the basement of their frat house or something, including rocket launchers. And so yeah, they essentially dress up like they're in the army, and they start, you know, tracking him down with cameras, and there's like hacking and stuff going on. I'm just like, oh, you know what, this is a bit much, man. Like, it's a Scarecrow. Let's keep it to the farm type thing, and let's just have it kill people. But at the same time, the kills are pretty decent. There's some good gore in there, yeah, it's you know, it all comes down to it. How are you going to kill this Scarecrow? Why is everything, you know, who's doing what? What's happening? And yeah, it's still fun. It's still fun. I don't know if I liked it as much as the first one, simply because there's this weird sequence that, you know, between the cinematographer and the director, the possession sequences were a little weird. Didn't really I don't know, they didn't fit. You know, it seems like they tried a low budget way to indicate that this possession thing was taking place, and I don't know, I didn't like the way it looked. It didn't buy it for me. And then Tony Todd's character, he's throughout the whole point where he's in the film, and I think most of it seemed to be shot like by himself, like after the fact. He's saying a whole bunch of stuff, and it didn't really make much sense. It's a whole bunch of almost like biblical warnings and poems and prayers and all that kind of stuff, doomsday speak, and I don't know. It didn't really fit in with the rest of the film whatsoever. Had it just been like that and it continued on in that vein, sure, but you know, like as soon as the Candyman is out of the picture, and it just turns into your regular hack and slash kill fest, right? So yeah, I don't know. It's I didn't like it nearly as much as the first one, but it does end. Here it is. It does end with probably the best monster fight I've seen since Freddy versus Jason, maybe? Aliens versus Predator? Yeah. Scarecrow Slayer, end of the film. Good fight. At least in theory. I may have filled in some of the blanks in my mind to make it a little bit better, but it was worth it made the film like that much better at the end, seeing what happened. So that was interesting. The third film is called Scarecrow Gone Wild, and if that brings any images to your mind, it should be, you know, Girls Gone Wild meets Scarecrow, and you wouldn't be too far off. Yeah. Again, I think this was essentially released the same year as the second one, 2004, so it was probably early 2004 and then late 2004. Yeah, it is very much a Girls Gone Wild meets the Scarecrow movies. It's still the revenge flick. Yeah, I don't know. The kills aren't as good in this one. In fact, the kills are pretty bad. They're actually really bad. But as is a Gone Wild necessity, there is added nudity. Yes, there's quite a bit of nudity and hard bodiness and yeah. So if that's your thing, Scarecrow Gone Wild is definitely where you need to start. Because really, you don't need to watch any of the films in order. I'm not gonna lie. It's directed by Brian Katkin. Katkin. Again, nobody. He's actually more known as an editor, as far as I can tell. In the film, there's a bunch of. This time they are in, college, university, and there's freshmen and there's seniors and all that kind of stuff. And you get people named Matthew Linhardt, Samantha Aisling. I actually knew an Aisling once. Caleb Roerig, David Zelina, Christina Sheldon, Jeff Rector, Tara Platt, Travis Parker. None of the names really ring any bell. None of the faces really ringed any bells. But it did have a name. Not as good as the Candyman. No. This one has Ken Shamrock, the wrestler, playing I think they're basketball teams. He plays the coach, or maybe the baseball players. I think he plays the baseball coach. Maybe he's just a general coach. I don't know. Maybe he coaches several teams, but he plays the coach, and actually eventually ends up fighting the Scarecrow at one point. But like I say, the kills aren't as good in this one. The general premise here is it's the sports team group of guys. It's the hazing initiation. Unfortunately, one of the kids that they're initiating, he's diabetic, and they string him up on where the Scarecrow is, and essentially leave him there, and he dies. Well, he goes into a coma. He's practically dead, and he goes into a coma, but while he's in that state, he possesses the Scarecrow, and wash, rinse, repeat. And the big difference here is because he's in a coma, they determine that yes, the possession is related, and they're trying to revive their friend so that they can stop the Scarecrow. And so they go about that. But I'd say most of the film is either there's making out scenes. There's a lot of scenes on the beach. Some bad music. Though I did like there was one song sung by a guy with a guitar. One of the kids on the beach, and he's singing this song, and it's essentially it's a heartbreak song, with the ending thing being you leave me like a man full of straw, relating back to the Scarecrow. And you know what, it wasn't a bad song. Well, it wasn't a good song, but it wasn't bad. It was actually kind of funny. It's the kind of music that I would actually record and stuff and put on my phone or something, just because nobody would know what it is. And so there's a lot of fighting in this one. Luckily, nobody's really into the guns and stuff. It's more either on the beach or in a hospital. It's essentially the two locations. Not really scary. I think this one had a little bit. There's a couple of jump scares in the beginning and near the end that were better than pretty much the second film. I think the first film had a few more scares than both the second and third combined. But it's just again more Scarecrow fighting. The good thing about Scarecrow Gone Wild is it does have a twist ending, which you really shouldn't see coming. The way it's set up is it's really well done. Unfortunately, it then goes downhill, and the denouement, if you will, the climax to the denouement. It has a secondary climax. Yeah, it not very good. So that's the Scarecrow trilogy, and if you like, you can track it down. They are all available on an Echo Bridge home entertainment DVD. You could probably get this for, I don't know, probably under $10. They are all, well, all on one disc. But you know what? The quality of the films in general isn't that great, so it's okay. They're short. Again, roughly about an hour and a half each. So you got 4.5 hours. Obviously, it's compressed. It's not going to look the best, but there's no extras, no extras whatsoever. It's just the movies. And you know what? The movies are worth it. They're worth watching. I would watch all three again. I have no problem watching it. Like I said, they're kind of fun, but they do have their faults. They have a lot of faults. If I was to give ratings to them, I'd say first one is a 2.5 out of 5. Second one would be I don't know, another 2.5 out of 5, maybe 2.5. The last one was definitely a 2. If the kills were better, the third one, I'd bump it up. Unfortunately, nudity isn't going to save the film as much as I enjoyed every minute. I'm not gonna lie. There are some beautiful people in the movie, both male and female, and so I'm not gonna say there wasn't anything to look at. It's just, for a film like this where you got a killer Scarecrow, the kills gotta deliver, and in the third movie, they do not whatsoever. Not at all. So, there you go, guys. That's my take on the first 3 Scarecrow movies. Who knows? They're probably... I wouldn't be surprised if they made another 10. I think the Asylum was actually involved in some of them. Maybe the second one. Yeah. What are you gonna do? So, yeah, that's it for this video, guys. I'm sure there's going to be some more 31 Days of Horror reviews coming your way. And, yeah, Toronto After Dark is coming soon. So, be prepared for a lot of movies you've never heard about. And first-hand impressions of, yeah, some great, great horror movies. You know, Canadian, American. I think there's some there's documentary. I think there's maybe an Asian film. Just all sorts of crazy stuff. And I will get back to you after watching them and let you know what I think. So, till next time, guys. Take care. Have a good one.